If wild boars stormed into your farm every night and destroyed your crops, what would you do to stop them? For me, that was no longer a simple question. Just 2 days earlier, the largest wild boar eradication operation in the area had delivered results far beyond expectations. Hundreds of wild boars were captured within a short period of time. Massive cage traps kept slamming shut throughout the night, while the violent clanging of metal echoed across the forest. But the most dangerous ones still had not appeared. They were the old dominant boars, incredibly intelligent and always able to avoid ordinary traps. I understood clearly that if they were allowed to survive, the entire herd would quickly return. Fresh tracks continued to appear around the devastated fields, fences kept getting smashed apart, and infrared cameras constantly captured enormous dark figures moving through the night. They no longer rushed recklessly toward food the way they once had. After being hunted repeatedly, the herd had completely changed its movement patterns. They split into smaller groups, circled around dangerous areas, and only appeared at the most unpredictable times. That was why I decided to change the entire plan. Instead of placing only a few isolated traps, this time the entire forest would be surrounded with multiple trap locations. The first trap was set right along the forest edge, where a narrow trail filled with fresh tracks was still deeply pressed into the damp ground. I knew the dominant boar usually passed through this area after dark. That night, the silence felt suffocating. Only the sound of insects echoed through the thick darkness. Then finally, the massive shadow appeared. The dominant boar slowly stepped out from the bushes, moving with extreme caution. Several times it moved forward, then suddenly backed away, making me think it had detected the trap. But in one brief moment when its guard dropped slightly, it stepped a few paces deeper inside. Instantly, the steel door slammed shut with a deafening crash that echoed across the forest. The boar reacted violently almost immediately. It rammed into the metal bars with tremendous force, causing the entire cage to shake violently. The impact echoed through the darkness, making it feel as though the trap could burst apart at any second. But this time, everything had been reinforced far more heavily than before. At another location on the opposite side of the forest, the second trap quickly proved effective as well. 2 wild boars appeared at the same time, moving cautiously around the baited area. They constantly sniffed the air and circled the trap several times before finally deciding to step inside. Then only seconds later, the door slammed shut decisively. Both animals immediately panicked, repeatedly smashing into the steel frame from every direction in a desperate attempt to escape. But every exit had already been sealed completely shut. The next morning, I returned to inspect the entire trap system. Even from far away, chaotic noises could already be heard coming from deep within the forest. As I moved closer, the trapped boars reacted aggressively at once. They kept charging into the metal bars, kicking clouds of dirt into the air. I kept a safe distance while quickly checking each trap one by one before handling the situation. But the trap that truly shocked me was the one near the eastern swamp. Inside was not just a few boars, but an entire herd crammed tightly together in the confined space. Massive black bodies slammed into one another and crashed violently against the metal frame, creating a scene unlike anything I had ever witnessed before. The growling, the rattling steel, and the mud being thrown everywhere made the entire scene feel more tense than ever. Only after checking every trap location did I finally let out a deep breath of relief. At the very least, the most dangerous boars had finally been brought under control. The area around the farm gradually became quiet again. And for the first time after many sleepless nights, I felt that this battle was finally under control, at least for now.
What would you do when facing over 90 kilograms of muscle charging wildly through the dark? For us, that's not a rare situation. It's a routine part of daily work in the Mississippi Delta. In this world, every mistake comes at a cost. Destroyed crops, damaged property, and sometimes human safety itself. We are a rapid response team specializing in wild hog control, one of the most serious ecological threats in this region. Wild hogs don't just tear through fields in a matter of hours. They collapse levees, overturn farmland, and carry a range of dangerous diseases. Our work doesn't begin with action, but with observation. Deep tracks pressed into wet soil, freshly churned mud, or scattered corn. Every detail becomes data used to map the movement patterns of an entire sounder. Our goal is not reckless action. Instead, it's calculated control, minimizing risk to people and livestock while ensuring long-term effectiveness. Two corral trap systems, each about 6 meters long, are deployed at strategic points. When driven inside, the hogs panic, slamming into the netting with full force. But instead of rigid resistance, the net is designed to flex, absorbing impact and holding them without creating a breaking point. To make that possible, preparation takes days. The first phase is conditioning. The net is suspended high on T-posts nearly 1.8 meters tall. Beneath it, dozens of kilograms of corn are spread evenly, creating a sense of safety. The hogs come to feed, repeating the behavior multiple times without encountering danger. That familiarity becomes the key to breaking their natural caution. A few days later, the system switches to capture mode. The net is lowered, everything appears unchanged, except this time, there is no escape. Still, wild hogs are not easily fooled. Infrared camera data after 1 a.m. shows the entire group lingering at the trap's edge, using their snouts to pull bait without fully stepping inside. Not a single animal crosses the boundary. This is where patience is tested. One wrong move, and the entire operation could fail. Nearly an hour passes in silence. Then the lead sow, the one guiding the group, finally steps across the edge. It enters, probes cautiously, then begins to feed. Within seconds, the others follow. In that moment, everything changes. Once the entire group is inside, the system is triggered. The net drops, enclosing the entire space. Success doesn't come from luck, but from precise understanding of their behavior. The next morning, the scene looks like a storm has just swept through. Mud is scattered everywhere, the net stretched tight under the pressure of dozens of bodies trampling and struggling to escape. The noise is relentless, chaotic, yet the structure holds. We approach in a controlled manner, using specialized catch poles with cable loops to restrain each individual. Every movement must be synchronized and precise. There is no room for error. At another site near a livestock area, the situation becomes more complicated. A section of the net is torn, a sign that an individual had escaped before. We repaired it, but the connectors weren't strong enough. With their sharp memory, the hogs can return to that exact weak point. In cases like this, there is no room for risk. A swift decision is made to eliminate the threat before it spreads. As night falls, we continue moving between trap sites. Each location tells a different story, but all revolve around one principle: understand behavior to control behavior. At the final site, the most destructive individuals are contained inside. They charge the net in desperation, but there is no escape. The work continues until the last light of dusk fades. When the operation ends, the exhaustion finally sets in. But what remains is more than just numbers brought under control. It is stability restored to an entire region. With wild hogs, strength doesn't lie in muscle, but in their ability to learn and adapt. And if the strategy isn't precise, a single mistake is enough to render every previous effort meaningless. On the rugged mountain ranges of Montana, where dense forests blend with highland grasslands and winding river valleys, wild bears roam freely through a vast and majestic landscape. While they symbolize the strength and freedom of this land, their growing numbers also bring increasing concerns. Bears often break into farms, destroy livestock feed, and rummage through waste, causing significant property damage each year and sometimes creating dangerous situations for both humans and animals. Wild bears are among the most iconic and formidable animals in North America, and Montana is one of their ideal habitats. Among dense pine forests, towering Rocky Mountains, and wide river valleys, two main species dominate: black bears and the larger, more powerful grizzly bears. As omnivores, they feed on everything from berries, roots, fish, and insects to larger prey. Thanks to vast wilderness areas like Glacier National Park and the Bob Marshall Wilderness Complex, bear populations in Montana continue to thrive, making this region both a paradise for nature lovers and a harsh test for those living on the edge between wilderness and human settlements. In areas where bears repeatedly return near farms and residential zones, control can no longer rely on random reactions or temporary measures. Instead, carefully planned trapping systems must be deployed, tailored to the movement patterns and level of caution of each individual animal. One commonly used method is large steel cage traps, placed precisely at locations the bear has approached multiple times over consecutive nights. The goal is not only to contain the bear, but also to ensure the entire control process remains stable and minimizes risks for both humans and the animal. The effectiveness of this system does not lie in its size, but in how accurately it is positioned along the bear's familiar travel routes. Before deployment, days of monitoring are required to determine exactly where the animal passes, where it lingers, and how it approaches food sources. Footprints in soft soil, claw marks on tree trunks, overturned trash, and repeatedly used paths all serve as key indicators for placement. Only when these signs are clear is bait placed deep inside, forcing the bear to fully enter the controlled zone. However, not every individual reacts in predictable ways. Bears that have previously encountered humans or escaped control efforts tend to become highly cautious. In such cases, cage traps are no longer ideal, and teams must switch to a more discreet method: foothold snare traps placed directly along established travel paths. The entire mechanism is carefully concealed beneath soil, leaf litter, and surrounding natural elements to avoid creating anything unusual. When the bear steps into position, the cable loop tightens almost instantly and is anchored to a secure point strong enough to prevent the animal from moving far. Under Montana's harsh conditions, controlling a bear is never a matter of chance, but the result of observation, patience, and field experience. Bear hunting requires meticulous planning, specialized equipment, and absolute respect for the animal. Hunting seasons typically occur in spring and fall, depending on the region and species. While some areas allow baiting, this practice is completely prohibited in Montana for ethical and ecological reasons. As a result, participants must rely on natural terrain and a deep understanding of bear behavior. If you were living in Montana and faced the challenge of dealing with one of North America's most formidable predators, would you choose to observe, control, or confront it directly? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to follow for more journeys into wildlife control, survival, and life at the edge of the wild. Across the vast fields of southern Texas, where patches of torn-up soil stretch like scars across the land night after night, wild boars no longer appear as a random occurrence. They have become an organized pressure. At first, the damage was limited to a few corners of farmland, but within just a few days, entire areas could be torn apart as if an invisible storm had swept through. The real issue does not lie in the destructive power of individual animals, but in how the entire herd moves along fixed routes, repeating almost exactly each night. And once that pattern is established, trapping is no longer an experiment. It becomes a strategy that demands precision down to the smallest detail. In the early stage, small cage traps were deployed with a simple goal: to capture individual animals quickly. But reality unfolded in the exact opposite direction. Each time one boar was caught, the rest of the herd did not return as expected, but instead showed clear behavioral changes. They approached more slowly, paused longer at safe distances, and even retreated entirely if they detected any unusual signs. This made small traps not only ineffective, but they also unintentionally trained the herd to become more cautious. Each failure was not just a missed opportunity. It became a lesson remembered by the entire group. From that point, a completely different approach began to take shape. Instead of targeting individuals, the focus shifted to controlling the entire herd in a single attempt. Large-scale trapping systems started to appear, no longer resembling a trap, but more like an open space that did not create a sense of confinement. Steel posts were arranged in wide circular formations, but not too densely to avoid raising suspicion. There were no doors slamming shut immediately, no obvious mechanical movements. Everything was designed to blend into the natural environment, as if it were just a normal part of the landscape. The first phase was not about capturing, but about familiarization. Bait was placed outside at first, then gradually moved deeper into the trapping area. For many consecutive days, no action was taken. The herd began to approach, initially as individuals, then in small groups. They stepped in and out, observed, and returned again. Over time, the boundary between outside and inside gradually disappeared. Once most of the herd became comfortable moving in and out of the area without encountering danger, the trap finally entered its operational phase. The most critical moment does not lie in the activation, but in the timing of the wait. The operator must monitor through cameras, patiently waiting until the entire herd has entered, with no individuals left lingering at the edges. Only then is the system activated remotely. A large gate drops in an instant, sealing off the entire space. There is no second chance. If triggered too early, the remaining animals will learn and disappear. If too late, the herd may retreat. Here, precision is not measured in seconds, but in the depth of behavioral understanding. The entire process requires time and near absolute patience. For many days, even weeks, there is no direct human interference. Distance is maintained. All signs of intervention are eliminated. The herd gradually returns to its normal habits, but within a space that has already been controlled. And when the right moment arrives, the system is activated one final time, precise, decisive, leaving no gaps. The final result is not just the number of boars captured, but the disruption of the herd's entire movement cycle. Once that structure is broken, familiar routes are no longer used, and the pressure on farmland decreases significantly. This shows that the true effectiveness of the system does not lie in the mechanics of opening and closing, but in its ability to control behavior on a large scale. The conflict between humans and wild boars has never been a contest of strength. It is a competition of adaptability. With each failure, the boars become more cunning. And with each adjustment, humans must become more precise. In an environment where every detail can be detected, a single small mistake can cause the entire strategy to collapse before it even takes effect. In Alberta, once thriving cornfields have been heavily devastated, with more than 500 acres of corn severely damaged. The sight of bears appearing before harvest season is becoming increasingly common. Deep claw marks from black bears scar tree trunks, while entire rows of corn are flattened overnight. Their incursions are so calculated that from the center of the field to its outer edges, detecting and stopping them has become nearly impossible. Not only do they destroy crops, but these bears are also becoming increasingly bold. They enter residential areas, rummage through trash bins, and even appear right at people's doorsteps, leaving residents constantly on edge and anxious. Here, farmers and wildlife control teams are struggling to reduce the pressure from the growing bear population, animals that are causing serious economic damage. Every year, hundreds of beehives are destroyed, crops are lost, and daily life is disrupted. The damage goes beyond numbers, spreading into prolonged psychological stress as residents no longer feel safe on their own land. The Alberta government has been forced to implement structured control measures, aiming to significantly reduce bear density in the area while still maintaining ecological balance. In response, control methods have gradually shifted from direct confrontation to carefully planned trapping strategies. Instead of risky close encounters, people began leveraging the bear's natural foraging behavior to lure them into preset trapping systems. To prepare an effective trap site, bait remains the key factor. A mixture of honey, grains, and fermented fruit is widely used. A sweet yet pungent scent that can travel through the air and attract bears from long distances. This mixture is placed inside culvert-style traps, solid cylindrical or metal frame structures, carefully camouflaged within the surrounding vegetation. From the bear's perspective, it is not a trap at all, but simply a familiar path leading straight to food, until the door quietly closes behind it. When the bear enters to reach the bait, the drop door mechanism is triggered, shutting behind it and containing the animal without causing immediate panic. This design takes advantage of the bear's curiosity and tendency to move forward, increasing capture success rates while ensuring operator safety. However, not every situation is suitable for culvert traps. In dense forests or more complex terrain, snare traps are deployed as a more flexible solution. Strong cable loops are set along the trails that bears frequently use, those invisible paths formed through repeated movement. These locations are identified through footprints, claw marks on trees, disturbed ground, and lingering scent. When a bear passes through, the snare tightens in a controlled manner, holding the animal in place. The anchoring system is designed to minimize injury while preventing the bear from moving too far. Whether using culvert traps or snares, the deciding factor lies in correctly reading bear behavior. These animals are highly intelligent and extremely cautious. They can detect unfamiliar scents from hundreds of meters away, and even the smallest anomaly can cause them to avoid an entire area for days. That's why trapping is not just about technique. It is a combination of observation, patience, and a deep understanding of their movement patterns. A single mistake can render the entire setup ineffective, and the bear may never return. In many cases, successful control does not come from speed, but from precise preparation. When traps are placed in the right location at the right time and aligned with the behavior of the bear population, The result is not just the capture of a single animal. It is the long-term reduction of pressure across the entire area. If you find this control journey fascinating, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to explore more thrilling and unexpected wildlife stories.
Along the edges of forests where they meet residential areas, the presence of bears is no longer occasional. They return, observe, remember, and once they discover an easy food source, trash, livestock, storage areas, they begin forming a dangerous habit. Once that habit repeats, simple deterrence methods are no longer effective. At a forest edge area in Northern America, the signs have become increasingly clear. Trash is scattered as if a small storm passed through. Tree trunks carry deep claw marks far above human reach. And on damp ground, large footprints form a fixed trail. This is no longer a wandering individual. This is a bear that knows the route. The control team does not begin with traps. They begin with observation. Infrared cameras are placed along movement corridors, not to capture every moment, but to identify patterns. After several nights, a clear pattern emerges. The bear appears at the same time, follows the same path, and pauses at a specific point before moving deeper into residential areas. Once the behavior is identified, the trap is set. Unlike smaller traps, this system is designed as a complete control structure. A cylindrical steel tube trap, over 2 meters long, with a diameter wide enough for a full-grown bear to enter without feeling confined. Inside, there are no sharp edges. Everything is rounded to minimize injury risk. But the decisive point lies in the trigger mechanism. Instead of using injuring clamp traps, this system uses a one-way drop door. Once the bear moves deep enough inside, its body weight activates the closing mechanism behind it. The steel door slides down quickly but without a harsh impact, just enough to block escape. Once inside, the bear has no way out. However, capturing the bear is only half the story. After the trap is triggered, the control team does not approach immediately.
馬が箱罠で捕獲されました。
They monitor remotely through cameras to ensure the animal remains stable and not overly stressed. The timing of approach is carefully calculated, usually when the bear has calmed down. But not everything is always controlled in time. In some forest edge areas, there have been cases where bears move deep into residential zones without early detection, entering yards, livestock areas, or familiar human pathways. In close encounters, tension rises rapidly and people often have little time to react, especially when the bear has grown used to searching for food near human activity, making it more bold and likely to return repeatedly, gradually erasing the boundary between wild and residential space. The next stage requires precision. The bear may be sedated using specialized equipment, then health checked, tagged, and relocated to a suitable area, usually deeper into the forest, far from residential zones. The goal is not removal, but balance. But things do not always go as planned. If the trap closes too early and only part of the bear enters, it will learn and never return. If the scent is not natural enough, it will stop at the edge and disappear. And if the timing is missed when the bear is fully inside, the opportunity may be lost forever. That is why bear control is not a single action, but a tightly connected strategy. From observation, trap setup, scent guidance, to the exact moment of activation. As the boundary between forest and residential areas continues to shrink, systems like this are becoming the last line of defense. No noise, no chaos, just precise calculation, step by step. Because once a bear learns to return, the question is no longer whether it will appear again. The question is, next time, are you ready?
十分あるんじゃないですか。
No one expected a scene like this to unfold in the middle of a city. A wild boar charged straight through a glass door, the crash echoing across a residential area. Just hours later, another group appeared on the beach, running along the shoreline under bright lights and rising panic. Cameras captured them crossing roads, overturning trash bins, slipping into neighborhoods as if this place had always belonged to them. No distance left. No boundaries anymore. As the damage spread, control teams were forced to step in. In Texas, this had become a familiar scenario. Helicopters circled overhead, scanning forests and open fields, revealing the herd's movement routes. Overlapping tracks formed repeating paths, almost following a fixed rhythm each night. From above, these invisible roads began to emerge, and from them, a strategy took shape.
Check.
Instead of acting immediately, the team chose to observe. Infrared cameras were installed along key movement corridors. Each night, data was recorded with precision. The timing of the herd's arrival, how they approached food sources, and how they reacted to even the smallest environmental changes. Nothing was rushed. Every step depended on understanding behavior before intervention. When all conditions were met, the first trap was deployed. It was a smart enclosure system, blending seamlessly into the environment, with no noise or unusual signs. Bait was placed inside. On the monitor, each animal appeared, stepping in cautiously before gradually lowering its guard. When most of the herd had entered, a command was sent. The steel gate slammed shut in an instant, silently holding nearly the entire group. But not all were captured. A few individuals remained outside, retreating just in time. They watched from a distance, learned quickly, and disappeared. These few changed everything. After just one encounter, the herd's behavior began to shift. Closed structures were avoided. Even the smallest irregularities were detected. Their caution intensified, making initial methods less effective over time. Faced with this, the strategy had to evolve. Instead of small traps, the team built a large circular enclosure in an open area. No roof, no sense of confinement. Wide entry points made the structure resemble a natural feeding ground. At first, the boars lingered at the edges, but with no sign of danger, they moved deeper, more freely, gradually forming a habit of returning. The acclimation process lasted for days. No sudden interference, no signals that could trigger panic. Only when the entire herd was fully inside did the decisive moment arrive. Two large gates dropped simultaneously from opposite sides, cutting off every escape. The impact echoed as the herd surged against the barrier, but the circular design absorbed the force effectively, leaving no weak points. The final operation was carried out near a dry zone by the lakeshore, identified as a critical movement route. An even larger trap was constructed, with every parameter carefully calculated in advance. One by one, the animals entered cautiously, unaware that the entire space was already under control. And when the final gate closed, it was over. No more nights of torn ground. No more herds returning to disrupt the fragile calm. The next morning, transport began. Teams used mobile fencing combined with gentle sound cues to guide the animals in a controlled manner. No rush, no panic. Each group was loaded and transferred to designated management areas, becoming part of a long-term, sustainable control strategy. In the end, this was never a battle of strength. It was a battle of understanding.
Oh, he's a big one! Whoa, out there. All right.
Every trap works only when it reflects how the animal thinks and reacts. And only when humans adapt faster can we truly protect crops, water sources, and the delicate balance of nature. If you want to explore more real-world control strategies like this, follow the channel and share your thoughts. If this herd makes it through the night, what's at risk isn't just a few crop rows or a small corner of a field. It could mean an entire year of labor wiped out in just a few short hours. In many rural areas of the United States, this is no longer a hypothetical. It's a reality that has repeated itself far too many times. When night falls, fields that seem peaceful by day become silent targets for roaming groups of wild boars. And before the sun even rises, dozens of hectares can be torn apart, as if an invisible storm had just swept through. What makes the situation dangerous isn't just the numbers, it's the speed. With wild boars, everything happens faster than humans can react. Once they've chosen a target, the window to intervene is almost non-existent. Statistics from southern states show that even a group of 15 to 20 can destroy over a hectare of crops in just a few hours overnight. But what's even more alarming is that they don't move randomly. Wild boars remember routes, recognize their surroundings, and learn from every encounter. Just one or two encounters with traps can cause an entire group to completely alter its path. The footprints appearing along the edge of the field tonight are no longer on the old route. They've shifted slightly, a small detail, but enough to suggest the herd is testing a new approach. And in wildlife control, missing this moment means losing the opportunity altogether. Sometimes, just one night of delay can lead to an entire season's failure.
Get a pole, boys.
There is no advanced technology here. No sensors. No remote controls. Just familiar farm materials. Things that have been used and refined through years of experience. Yet that simplicity becomes the advantage. Every trap placement is calculated based on the natural behavior of wild boars, guiding them through habit rather than forcing change. The bait is used sparingly, never too much, never enough to create suspicion. Because wild boars are extremely sensitive. A single unfamiliar scent, the slightest irregular detail, can make the entire group stop and retreat instantly. The goal isn't to lure them into a trap in an obvious way. The goal is to make them believe nothing has changed, that their familiar path is still as safe as ever. And as they keep moving forward, they unknowingly enter a space that has already been brought under control. Fast deployment does not mean rushing. It is the result of eliminating every unnecessary step through accumulated experience.
Put this bottom, yep, like that.
Everything must be completed before the herd arrives. When that moment comes, all adjustments must stop. There is no second attempt. No room for error. What has been set in place must be trusted completely. In the darkness, an unexpected sound breaks the silence earlier than anticipated. That is often when the herd begins to probe. They move closer, pause, listen, then decide whether to go further. This is the most fragile moment. The herd keeps moving. They pass through each control point without suspicion. No panic, no signs of alarm, and within a short span of time, everything unfolds exactly as planned. When the trapdoor finally closes, the number inside is almost unbelievable, a sight that is both surprising and a stark reminder of the true scale of the problem. Wild boars reproduce at an astonishing rate. A single female can give birth to 2 litters per year, each with 4 to 6 piglets. Without continuous control, the results of one night can become meaningless within just a few months. That's why what is achieved today is not just the protection of a single field. It is time, precious time, regained for farmers, for communities, and for the balance of the ecosystem. In the end, effectiveness does not come from complex devices or advanced technology. It comes from understanding animal behavior, making the right decisions at the right moment, and maintaining patience when it matters most. In this silent confrontation, victory does not come from strength, but from precision, experience, and a long-term responsibility to the land being protected.